Would a second life really turn out better? After being reborn, I still chose the young general I'd shared a polite but distant marriage with before, rejecting the devoted scholar Lu Guan. I'd already lived 80 years across 2 lives. I wanted stability, not romance. Yunjing looked less like a man proposing marriage, and more like he'd been dragged to his execution. We grew up together and got along well, but he loved my sister. His mother forced him to marry me, and I truly wanted him. No wonder he looked at me like I was a ghost. In my last life, I truly loved Yunjung. That young general on a white horse was like sunlight breaking into my sheltered world. At 16, he rode alone through an enemy camp, yet he'd still climb a tree to retrieve my lost kite. After marrying him, I genuinely hoped we'd be happy together. But he never loved me. I was jealous of every woman he brought home, yet still pretended to be gracious and perfect. I wore myself down like a candle burning through the night until even my love for him slowly burned away. Before he died, he wiped my tears and said, "If there's a next life, don't marry me again. Find someone who loves you." I nodded through my tears. After he died, I lived another 20 years before passing peacefully. Then I woke up on the day my marriage was being arranged. Ignoring Yunjung's frantic signals, I calmly accepted the Yun family's betrothal gifts and chose him again. Not for love. Across 2 lives, I'd already lived 80 years. Love and romance felt ridiculous to me now. Just as my sister entering the palace was our declining Marquise Changyang family's best chance to recover, marrying into the general's household was the best choice after weighing everything. I'd always been ordinary. In looks, brains, and talent, I couldn't compare to my sister. The Marquis Changyang family hadn't produced a capable heir in 3 generations, so my parents placed all their hopes on my brilliant sister. Countless men pursued her. For me, there was only Lu Guan. I knew Lu Guan had loved me his whole life and would someday become one of the most powerful officials in the empire. But I also knew about his difficult widowed mother, spoiled sister, a princess who'd love him for decades, and the 20 brutal years he'd spend serving far from home. Even with my 17-year-old body back, I was still an old woman inside. Old people like familiar things, the same food, tea, plays, wedding dress, even the same husband. Last life, Yunjung wouldn't lift my bridal veil. This time, he didn't even enter our room. My embarrassed mother-in-law came in and said, "Lan Yin, just wait. Tomorrow I'm going to teach that brat a lesson." "Mother, it's fine. Brother Yunjung is busy with military matters, I understand." She waved, and a servant brought in a 4-tier food box from Fanlu, filling the room with delicious aromas. She'd always treated me well. Her only daughter had died before she was 100 days old, so when my own mother focused entirely on my sister, she practically raised me like her own daughter. I spent over 30 years wondering why Yunjung could never love me while his mother adored someone as ordinary as me. Only after turning 50 did I understand. Love makes no sense and can't be forced. Aside from having a husband who didn't love me, my life had actually been quite comfortable. After my mother-in-law left, I went straight to bed. One exhausting day had nearly broken even this young body. I removed all my hair ornaments, washed out the sticky hair oil, scrubbed off the heavy makeup, and finally felt human again. As I lay down, Kaiki cautiously asked, "Madam, would you like to wait for your husband?" I rolled over and hugged my pillow. No, and from now on, there's no need to wait for him. In 60 years of marriage, the number of times he entered my room could be counted on one hand. The next morning, I ate a little breakfast and went alone to serve tea to my in-laws. The stick my mother-in-law had prepared for Yunjung never got used. Yunjung had returned to the frontier overnight. I wouldn't see him again for 3 years. When he returned, he'd bring back a pregnant woman who supposedly looked like my sister. Honestly, if he hadn't said so, I never would have noticed. Pretty women often resemble one another. My father-in-law stood beside a gentle, beautiful concubine with a tiny waist and full figure. This must have been Lady Lin. My mother-in-law looked furious but forced a smile for me. Fortunately, father-in-law usually kept his beautiful concubines with him at the frontier. In 5 years, father-in-law would die when an old wound returned. Ironically, Lady Lin, whom mother-in-law hated now, would later become her favorite card-playing partner. After years of playing together, mother-in-law finally realized fighting another woman over a man simply wasn't worth it. Then Yunjung's 2 chambermaids came forward to serve me tea. I gave each a pair of gold bracelets and officially made them concubines. They were honest women chosen by mother-in-law. Last life, I'd resented them, thinking they'd seduced Yunjung. But Yunjung didn't love me simply because he didn't like me. It had nothing to do with those women. Besides, what did love mean anyway? He claimed to love my sister and still slept with others. Even my in-laws had once been deeply in love. Father-in-law nearly died earning the military merit that won him permission to marry mother-in-law. When she nearly died giving birth to twin sons, he ate vegetarian meals for 3 years to pray for her. Yet their love faded too. My sister was Xie Yuanyi. I was Xie Lan Yin. Lan Yin from the saying that even beautiful beginnings can end bitterly. Years later, I once saw a white-haired Lu Guan at a temple during heavy snow. He stood across the corridor, watching me through the storm. After he left, I found a poem where he'd been standing. An old love crosses my heart. I look back, and mountains and rivers are already autumn. If longing lets us share the falling snow, perhaps in this life we still grew old together. I was grateful we'd only shared snow, not a lifetime. Some love is overwhelming across distance, but worn down by ordinary days. 3 days after my wedding, only mother-in-law and I remained at home. Her twin sons studied at Dongshan Academy, and she owned an estate nearby. In my last life, she invited me there, but I refused because I kept hoping Yunjung would come home. This time, I refused to wait. I packed early and went with her. The autumn estate looked like a painting. Red maples covered the mountain. Persimmons hung from branches like lanterns. A stream reflected the blue sky, with pebbles visible beneath the clear water. White reeds swayed beside the bank while egrets hunted fish in the shallows. The estate had simple white walls and dark tiled roofs. It wasn't as grand as the general's residence, but everything had been arranged by mother-in-law herself. Flowers, bamboo, koi ponds, all warm and peaceful. She and the twins stayed in the back courtyard. The front was reserved for Yunjung and me, and my rooms were already prepared. The warm room had thick bedding and stacked quilts. Afternoon sunlight came through the gauze curtains and turned everything honey-colored. Suddenly, I wanted to do absolutely nothing. Just sleep. As the saying goes, when nothing troubles your heart, every season is beautiful. The next afternoon, loud noises woke me from my nap. In the front courtyard, Yun Ting and Yun Hui were kneeling beside a flapping white crane with a small arrow stuck in its wing. Blood stained its white feathers, and mother-in-law was shaking with rage. I sent you back to school yesterday, and today you shot down the crane your headmaster has raised for 10 years. Even after being hit more than a dozen times, the boys kept protesting. We thought it was a wild crane. Wild, my foot! Mother-in-law smacked one across the back. I crouched down to inspect the crane. Luckily, the arrow had only pierced flesh and missed the bone. I looked up at the nanny. Nanny, bring my medicine box and the Wairong wound ointment from my room. My sister had given me the ointment. Used daily, it made skin glow, but the snow lotus inside was also excellent for wounds and scars. Mother-in-law tried to stop me. Something that valuable should be saved for yourself. Why waste it on a wild animal? Mother, valuable things are still meant to be used. I gently held her hand. If we heal the crane, the headmaster's anger will already be half gone. They say women dress for those who admire them. These days, I only want to please myself. Leaving the ointment unused would be the real waste. Mother-in-law sat down, breathing hard, and pointed at the boys. No dinner, go kneel in the woodshed. I pulled out the arrow, applied medicine, and wrapped the crane's wing. It stared at me with shiny black eyes and stopped crying out. Afterward, I helped my dizzy mother-in-law rest, then secretly had 2 bowls of hot noodle soup sent to the boys. Sister-in-law! Shh! I shoved the bowls into their hands. Eat quickly, wipe your mouths when you're done. Yunhui's eyes turned red as he held the bowl. Sister-in-law, you're not mad at us? Of course I am. The Yun family is famous for perfect archery, and you two can't even hit a crane properly. After laughing, I turned serious. Be more careful from now on. No waving weapons or shooting arrows outside the training grounds, and tomorrow, apologize sincerely to the headmaster, understand? They nodded furiously, so obedient I wanted to pat their heads. You'd never guess these boys would someday terrify enemies on the battlefield. The red marks on their faces bothered me, so I rubbed on some leftover ointment and handed them the jar. Put it on the rest of your bruises too, especially your swollen backsides. Use plenty so you can still attend class. Sister-in-law, Yunjing and I lived apart for most of our marriage. After mother-in-law died, I remained alone at the estate. Only these 2 brothers regularly visited with their wives and children. They really were good kids. A month later, Steward Lee arrived with money from my dowry assets. When I left the general's residence, I took clothes, jewelry, and personal items. Bulky dowry pieces like the carved bed, jade screens, and silk from my sister were sold. Until Yoonjung was badly wounded at 40, he was stationed on the northern frontier and rarely saw me. Most of the time, I stayed at the general's residence with one abandoned concubine after another. Over those decades, 2 emperors changed. The capital endured 3 wars, and I fled to the estate 3 times before moving there permanently. My dowry was always the hardest thing to evacuate. So I sold nearly everything for 4,300 tiles of silver. I spent 4,000 buying the neighboring estate and had Steward Lee's family manage it. Dongshan was remote, but that also kept it away from war. The soil was fertile, and nearly anything planted there grew well. The estate mother-in-law had casually bought later became our family's refuge. It produced grain we could sell, store, or eat ourselves. I also rented out 2 well-located shops for my dowry for 80 and 100 taels a year. They never made much, and war eventually wiped them out. Most businesses I joined with noble women in the capital failed too. I lost more to scams than I ever earned. 80 years of life taught me one thing. I had 0 talent for business. My greatest skill was being born into money. Keeping what my family gave me was enough. On the first day of winter, Dongshan saw its first snow. Frost covered the roofs and reeds. Mother-in-law ordered Yunting and Yunhui to sweep the courtyard, but one secretly threw a snowball at the other. Soon they were having a full snowball fight. She reached for the broom, but I stopped her. They finally have a day off, let them play. You spoil them. She glared at me, smiling despite herself. That afternoon, we sat in the warm room drinking tea and eating roasted chestnuts while snow covered the plum tree outside. Seasons passed quickly. 3 years later, a letter came from Yoonjung. The Northern War was over. He was coming home. Mother-in-law, the twins, and I returned to the capital for New Year's. This time, Yoonjung didn't come home alone. He brought Liu Yi, a pregnant widow from a tofu shop on the frontier. He knelt beside her in the main hall. Mother, I've failed you, but Yi stayed with me in that harsh frontier for 2 years. Now she's carrying my child. I can't abandon her. Mother-in-law was shaking with rage. 3 years ago, you abandoned Lan Yin on your wedding night. She cared for your elders and managed this household while you disappeared. Now you come back with a pregnant woman? Are you humiliating Lan Yin or me? Mother, please calm down. I stepped forward and held her trembling hand. My husband has been busy serving the army. I don't feel wronged. Miss Liu's pregnancy is happy news for the family. I'd like to speak with the general privately. Mother, please allow it. Back in our room, Yoonjung stood in the middle of the hall, still carrying the chill of the frontier on his armor. Years of wind and war had hardened his features. What do you want to say? If you're going to blame Yi Yi, don't. She's gentle and won't compete with you. I smiled. Brother Yoonjung. He froze. When we were children, I'd often followed him around calling him that. I don't have feelings for you. I got straight to the point. Our marriage was arranged by our families. I don't need romance, only a peaceful life. I won't interfere with your concubines. I'll convince Mother to officially accept Liu Yi, and her child can be entered into the family register. You really don't mind? Why would I? A polite, distant marriage suits us. I've already signed this separation agreement. Sign it too. If you someday meet someone you truly want, I'll leave. And if I choose another path, I hope you'll let me go. Yoonjung signed immediately. We each kept a copy. His expression relaxed, and he bowed to me. Lan Yin, I'm sorry. You've been wronged. It's fine. Just keep treating me like a sister. But there's one thing we need to settle. Mother still controls household spending. If Lady Liu lives here to have her baby, servants, nurses, and food will all cost extra. I'm afraid that expense would burden you. Last life, I tried to be the perfect wife. Whenever Yoonjung took another concubine and the household allowance ran short, I covered the difference with my own dowry. Later, I finally realized, why was I spending my money to support his women? This time, I made that clear first. Don't worry, I have my own savings. I sighed in relief. Good. I'll arrange Rose Garden for Lady Liu. It's quiet and perfect for pregnancy. She can use the west gate and have her own kitchen. I'll be staying with Mother at Dongshan, so she won't need to visit me every morning. Everyone can live peacefully. Yoonjung looked at me strangely. You don't have to go that far. He hesitated.
Yi, she...
I know, she's gentle. I cut him off. That's exactly why I'm thinking of her. The servants here are strict military households. She may not adjust. Give her a private kitchen and let her eat whatever she wants. You pay for it, spoil her however you like, and I won't interfere. Yunjung fell silent, then finally nodded. Fine. You arrange the rooms. I'll cover everything else. Give her 4 maids and 2 older servants. None of it needs to come from the household accounts. Perfect. Then I'll go speak to Mother now and make Lady Liu's status official. Liu Yi wasn't a bad person. She openly loved money because she wanted security for herself and her child. If she got money from Yunjung, I didn't care. It wasn't mine. Life is too long for permanent enemies or friends. As long as nobody touched my interests, we could live peacefully. Liu Yi went into labor on New Year's Eve and gave birth to a son. That same night, my sister gave birth to the 9th prince and was promoted to consort Yi. Since Mother was away in Sichuan with Father, I was the only family member who could enter the palace to visit her. When the palace messenger arrived, Yunjung forgot all about his newborn son. It was the first news he'd heard about the woman he loved in years. As I changed into formal court dress, he suddenly entered, dismissed everyone, and pressed a wooden hairpin into my hand. If Consort Yi ever needs anything, take this to Imperial Physician Go from the Northwest. He'll obey any request. Last life, I'd been fighting with Yunjung over Lady Liu, so he returned to the frontier without telling me this. Years later, Physician Guo became someone my sister deeply trusted. Maybe I'd missed more than I realized. Yunjung really did care for her. If his love could protect my sister, that was enough. My sister lived in Qingyun Palace. The room had been renovated, but its age still showed. She'd entered the palace as only a low-ranking noblewoman, so her old quarters had been worse. After childbirth, she looked pale and fragile, like beautiful white jade. Seeing me, she forced a smile. Last time I saw you, you only came up to... She raised a hand toward her shoulder, but even that small movement exhausted her. How did you grow up so fast? My eyes burned. My sister had always been brilliant. Music, chess, painting, dancing, managing a household. She learned everything instantly. With me, Mother always sighed. If only you were half as smart as your sister, I wouldn't worry. Whenever Mother said that, my sister defended me. Our Ayin doesn't need to compete with anyone. She just needs to grow up happy. Even then, she knew she'd someday enter the palace. She gave me the hopes she'd never be able to live herself, wishing I could have a simple, happy life. As a child, I'd briefly envied her brilliance. Even the man I liked only saw her. But that jealousy never lasted. We were sisters, sharing the same blood, and she treated me so well. Whenever people praised the Z family's daughter, I felt proud too. For my wedding, she sent a gorgeous silk bridal gown that made everyone jealous. Yet I clearly remembered the day she entered the palace. She wore a plain outfit and carried one small bundle into those endless palace walls. I at least had the chance to marry someone I loved. She never even got to wear red for her own wedding. I looked down at the tiny 9th prince. He was red and wrinkled now, but someday he'd grow pale and handsome like his mother. His poor health would actually save him. When the new emperor later lost 2 possible heirs, nobody considered him. At 50, he became Prince Guanggan, and finally brought my sister out of the palace to care for her. After everything she suffered, at least her final years held some sweetness. I gave my sister Yunjung's wooden hairpin. After she died in my last life, I'd found many failed versions in her study. This one was his best work, carved with a plum blossom. She turned it over in her hands for a long time, then asked, "Does he treat you well?" I thought carefully before answering. Not especially well, but not badly either. He spent the last 3 years at the frontier. I've been living with mother-in-law at Dongshan, growing flowers and keeping birds. Whether Yunjung is around doesn't really change my life. My sister pinched my fuller cheek and finally relaxed. "You've gained some weight. Looks like you're doing all right." I waved it off. Still, she paused, then added seriously, "Don't rush marital matters. Let your body mature first, and maybe grow some common sense too." I was mentally 80. There wasn't much more common sense left to grow. That night, my sister sent Kui Lu for Physician Guo. Her 2 palace maids both knew medicine, and Kui Wen had even trained with midwives. My sister had always been extremely careful inside the palace. Yet the 9th prince still grew weaker each day. Physician Guo inspected every room and found nothing until he checked the wet nurse's quarters. Her hand warmer had unusually thick walls. Inside was hidden powder made from Nux vomica and Thunder God vine, mixed with honey. When the charcoal burns, poisonous fumes escape through the vents. Over time, the toxins passed through breast milk and damaged the child's liver and kidneys. His pulse would simply make him appear naturally weak. In my last life, my sister replaced the wet nurse months later, so she'd probably discovered it then. Luckily, the 9th prince was newborn and had barely been exposed. I relaxed, but if he grew up healthy, he could still be dragged into the fight for the throne. Before I could speak, my sister said, "Don't spread word of this. Record the child as physically weak and continue treating him carefully." She planned to pretend the 9th prince was sickly. That explained my last life. Despite his reputation for poor health and conveniently falling ill whenever trouble came, he'd lived perfectly well until my death. Once again, my sister was 10 steps ahead of me. So I happily stayed in a side room at Qingyun Palace instead of rushing home to reunite with Yunjung. My days were spent playing with the baby and eating my sister's expensive tonics. 1,000-year Lingji, 100-year herbs, just smelling them made me feel immortal. After watching me drink her tonics for 7 straight days until I practically glowed, my sister finally snapped. "Your husband finally came home. Shouldn't you go build your marriage instead of camping here?" I was waving a cloth tiger in front of the baby. "I'm still growing, there's no rush." My sister's face twitched. She narrowed her eyes at me. "Is something wrong between you two?" "No." I kept playing with the baby. "Want me to send one of my senior maids? Anything you can't handle, she can." "No!" I rejected that immediately. Every senior maid beside my sister was terrifyingly capable. Better not create trouble where there was none. My sister thought again, leaned closer, and lowered her voice. "Then maybe you need—" I nearly threw the cloth tiger, my face burned bright red. "Sis!" She burst into laughter, happier than I'd seen her in a long time. Then a man's amused voice came from outside. "What's so funny?" The entire room went silent. The Emperor had arrived. I immediately knelt. "Right." The Emperor casually waved me up and went straight to my sister. Behind him stood a richly dressed young woman, Princess Huayang, who would spend half her life loving Lu Guan before marrying far away and dying beyond the frontier. She looked me over and snorted. "So you're the Z-girl? Nothing special. I truly don't know what Scholar Lu sees in you." My sister instantly lowered her eyes like she'd been hurt and leaned closer to the Emperor. He frowned. "Huayang, don't be rude." Princess Huayang pouted. I kept my head down like an obedient little quail. "The princess isn't wrong. I don't understand what Lu Guan sees in me either." Then my sister said softly, "My sister has been married to General Yun for 3 years. While he fought at the frontier, she served his mother and cared for his younger brothers. Why must the princess keep bringing up matters from before her marriage?" The Emperor patted my sister reassuringly, then looked seriously at Princess Huayang and suddenly announced, "Lady C is virtuous and filial. While General Yun serves the Empire, she fulfills his family duties and even cares for Consort Yi. I hereby grant her the title of second-rank honored lady." I froze. I got insulted once and somehow earned a noble title. What a deal. My sister gave me a look, and I quickly knelt to thank him. Then the Emperor turned to Princess Huayang. "Your words disgrace the imperial family. Apologize to Lady C." "Brother!" "Apologize." Princess Huayang bit her lip, her face bright red. "I'm sorry." Then she stormed out crying without even bowing. Once the room quieted, my sister tugged sweetly at the Emperor's sleeve. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The Emperor clearly loved that. He smiled and patted her hand. "All right, I know you're protective of your sister. It's late, I'll leave now, you should rest." After he left, my sister's smile faded. The palace is full of trouble. Go home quickly. Huayang lost face today. Who knows what she'll try tomorrow? I worried about her. "Won't she cause trouble for you?" My sister smiled so coldly the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "She wouldn't dare." With that confidence, maybe Princess Huayang was the one who needed protection. Before I left, my sister gave me a bundle of silver notes. "His Majesty gave these to me privately. Take them and don't tell anyone. I know Yunjung. His heart belongs elsewhere, so he won't treat you especially well. His family won't mistreat a wife, but keep this in case you ever need a way out. I have money. Save this for little Nine's future wife. Sister, take care of yourself too, and don't let him stand out too much." My sister fought back tears. "Yin, you've grown up." My tears fell instantly. Having memories of another lifetime came with one cruel thing. When you knew how long a separation would last, saying goodbye became impossible. By the time I returned to the general's residence, it was dusk. Yunjung wasn't there. No need to bow. I waved to Liu Yi. "How's the baby?" He's doing very well. Liu Yi looked delicate and even spoke softly. The general said I shouldn't disturb you, so... That's perfect. Rest well. If you need anything, have a maid ask the accounts office. She stared at me, probably shocked I was so easygoing. I returned to my courtyard. My luggage was already packed for Dongshan tomorrow. To my surprise, Yunjung was waiting beneath the plum tree. In plain clothes, he looked softer than he did in armor. You're back. Yes, did you need something? There's a palace banquet for the Lantern Festival. You're a titled lady now, so you'll attend with me. One change really could ripple into everything. Ever since I entered the palace, this life had started drifting away from the last. Yunjung looked at me thoughtfully. Lanyan, you're different from before. I smiled. What was I like before? You always followed me around calling me Brother Yunjung. You climbed trees for kites and cried over rabbits. That was 16-year-old Zilan Yin, not 80-year-old Zilan Yin. People change, haven't you? Yunjung's expression shifted, but he said nothing. At the Lantern Festival banquet, I saw Lu Guan again. 3 years had replaced his boyishness with calm confidence. He was like a sword resting in its sheath. Our eyes met. He froze for a moment, then looked away. Scholar Lu certainly looks impressive. Yunjung spoke beside me. I looked away and calmly sipped my wine. I hear his poetry is excellent too. Yunjung said nothing more, though he held his wine untouched for a long time. Halfway through the banquet, the music stopped and Princess Huayang stood with a bright smile. Just drinking on Lantern Festival is boring. Why don't we play a drinking game and compose poems? Everyone knew she was obsessed with Lu Guan, so nobody ruined her fun. After several rounds, she conveniently chose him. Lord Lu, compose a poem about plum blossoms. Lu Guan stood. The hall fell silent. His eyes briefly crossed the room and landed on me before he looked away. One lonely root fears neither frost nor snow. Cold blossoms and bare branches endure through time. Ask spring where its true message lies. The spring breeze was never meant for the imperial garden. Princess Huayang's smile stiffened. She understood. Lu Guan was politely saying he didn't want royal favor, or her. Her face changed several times before she suddenly turned toward me. I hear the general's wife is also well educated. She smiled, but her eyes stayed cold. Why don't you compose one too? Let's make the subject snow. The room instantly tensed. Every eye landed on me. Some sympathetic, some amused, others waiting for humiliation. Yunjung paused with his cup halfway up and glanced at me. I opened my mouth and answered honestly, Your Highness, I'm not talented enough. I can't compose poetry. The hall became even quieter. Princess Huayang's lips curved. You're too modest. Your Highness? A clear voice interrupted her. Lu Guan had stepped into the center of the hall. He bowed calmly. This drinking game only requires the loser to compose a poem. Madam C hasn't lost, so asking her to perform would break the rules. If Your Highness wants another poem about snow, I would be honored to offer one. Princess Huayang went pale. The emperor coughed and gave her a dark look. Enough, continue drinking. The music resumed, and the tension finally eased. I lowered my eyes and sipped my wine, my heart still beating fast. Yunjung leaned closer and whispered, He protected you. I didn't react. I'm a married woman. General, you're overthinking it. Yunjung said nothing and simply refilled his cup. After spring arrived, I moved back to Dongshan. Mother-in-law didn't want me to go. Yin, if you leave, won't that little temptress become even more arrogant? Mother, I linked my arm through hers. I'm still young. There'll be plenty of time later. The estate is peaceful. Let me stay there with you. She sighed. Fine. Life at Dongshan was far better than the capital. In spring, I gardened with mother-in-law and learned bookkeeping from Steward Li. In summer, we fished by the stream. In autumn, the mountains filled with fruit, and Yunting and Yunhui climbed trees for persimmons. Winter meant tea by the fire and snow on plum branches. 3 years became 6. Yunjung occasionally wrote about the frontier or a new daughter born to another concubine. I replied with practical household matters. Our letters read like correspondence between business partners. His letters gradually became more frequent. Lan Yin, we defeated 800 enemies today. Lan Yin, it's snowing at the frontier. Is everything well at home? I answered politely, untouched. An 80-year-old heart didn't flutter over a few words. 3 more years passed and news came that my sister was pregnant again. I rushed to the palace. This pregnancy was dangerous, and physician Guo said she was too weak to keep the child. Just as in my previous life, the baby was stillborn. My sister suffered terribly and had to grieve while guarding against palace schemes. I calculated that the emperor would fall seriously ill, and in about a month, the second prince and noble consort would launch a coup. My sister had already lost the emperor's favor, so after she recovered, I planned to take little Nine to Dongshan. But the coup came early. I had just brought her a calming tonic when fighting erupted outside. Her panic lasted only a second. She had prepared for this. "Take little Nine and go." She pushed him into my arms. "Eunuch Chen will get you out." "Sis." No arguing. She cut me off. Then she bent down and kissed little Nine's forehead. "Listen to your aunt." Little Nine nodded hard, biting his lip without crying. The night air smelled of blood. Outside, soldiers carrying torches ran everywhere. Eunuch Chen led us through dark alleys toward an exit. Just as we were nearly free, a wall of torchlight appeared ahead. "Soldiers!" Eunuch Chen stepped in front of us. "Madam, run!" I shoved little Nine into Eunuch Chen's arms and pushed them toward a small opening. "Take him to the general's residence." I took a deep breath, turned, and ran the other way, deliberately making my footsteps loud. "Over there, get her!" Torches rushed after me. I twisted through one alley after another until even I had no idea where I was. The shouting grew closer. Great. Maybe this time I wouldn't make it to 80. Then I stumbled, and a hand suddenly covered my mouth while another arm yanked me into a dark building. It's me. It was Lu Guan. He'd been working on imperial records in the palace for years. He pulled me into a pitch-black cellar, one arm tight around my waist. I couldn't see his face, only feel his hot, rapid breath against my neck. Soldiers searched above us, then moved on. Only then did I realize we were inside an archive cellar filled with old books. The air smelled of paper, ink, and the faint pine scent on Lu Guan. When the footsteps faded, I relaxed, then noticed his entire body trembling. "Lu Guan?" In the final flicker of torchlight, I saw his face was flushed from his neck to his ears. "Don't come closer." His voice was hoarse. He backed away, fingers trembling as he gripped the bookshelf. His breathing was heavy and uneven. "What's wrong with you?" I moved closer. "Don't, someone drugged me." He'd bitten his lip until it bled. His eyes were unfocused, burning with barely restrained heat. Suddenly, the scene felt strangely familiar. The coup, this cellar, the way we were looking at each other. Not from my last life, from something even earlier. Images flashed through my mind. Us together in this cellar, then me wearing a bridal gown as I married him. He lifted my veil and I called him husband. Looking at Lu Guan now, my heart tightened. I stepped forward. "I told you not to come closer." He knocked over a stack of books. They crashed across the floor. His voice was nearly a plea. "You'll regret it." I reached out and touched his face. His skin was burning hot. "Who knows if we'll even survive tonight?" His throat moved. "You're crazy." "Yeah, maybe I am." In the darkness, fabric slipped softly to the floor. His breathing stopped for one sharp second, like a string pulled too tight finally snapping. His lips still tasted faintly of blood, mixed with that pine scent. Outside, distant screams and fighting echoed through the palace. That overwhelming sense of déjà vu returned. I knew I'd lived this moment somehow. I didn't know what happened in that other life, and right now I didn't care. 3 days in that cellar felt like half a lifetime. When the palace finally went quiet, Lu Guan and I slipped out through a broken side gate. "Where are you going?" Under the moonlight, Lu Guan's eyes burned bright. I brushed dirt from my torn sleeve. After 3 days without properly washing or fixing my hair, I could only imagine how terrible I looked. "I have birds at home, I need to go feed them." He stared at me, then laughed in frustration. "Why not say you need to go home and feed the chickens?" Our shadows overlapped beneath the moon. Unfortunately, this could only be one night. Everything happened suddenly. I'd lost my head over a beautiful man, but I couldn't stay foolish forever. I was still married. "I doubt your mother would ever let me through the door." "I'll convince her I'll marry you properly." The moon was beautiful. Lu Guan like this made it dangerously easy to waver. I almost did. No need. My voice was calmer than I expected. The capital isn't safe anymore. You still have ambitions to fulfill. Great ministers rise through real work, just as great generals rise from the ranks. I don't want to be trapped in your household, and you shouldn't be trapped by what happened yesterday. I pulled my hand free, stepped back, and turned away.
"Take care, Lord Lu."
Lu Guan didn't move. Moonlight fell over his lonely figure. I wiped my eyes and turned down another street until he disappeared from view. Good. He would become a great minister with a wife, children, and grandchildren. I would live freely. I hired a carriage back to the general's residence. Little Nine had lost weight in just a few days. When he saw me safely return, he threw himself into my arms and stayed there for a long time. "Auntie, I missed you so much." The capital was worse than I remembered. The emperor had died 3 days earlier. The crown prince was accused of treason and imprisoned, while the second prince controlled the palace with the imperial guard. But the fourth and seventh princes had armies of their own. This wouldn't end quickly. My sister had lost favor after Little Nine's birth, so for now she was only confined inside the palace. But Little Nine was different. Once the second prince controlled the court, he'd eliminate every brother who might threaten his throne. His location wouldn't stay secret forever. My sister had trusted me with her son's life. I couldn't fail her. I wrote 3 letters. The first told my sister that Little Nine and I were safe, to be delivered whenever Eunuch Chen found a chance. The second told mother-in-law not to worry. The third went to the northern frontier, along with the separation agreement Yunjung and I had signed. Before dawn, I carried the sleeping Little Nine into a carriage and drove alone toward Dongshan. I'd secretly bought this estate years ago as an emergency refuge. Even mother-in-law didn't know. Stuart Lee had built a comfortable 2-courtyard home there, with a small study facing a pomegranate tree, warm bedrooms, and a little spring-fed koi pond in back. The pond had banana plants and wisteria nearby, plus a tidy vegetable garden behind bamboo fencing. Little Nine was timid for 3 days, then went completely wild. Barefoot fishing, climbing trees, stealing bird eggs, catching cicadas. Every night he'd count his adventures until he fell asleep smiling. If my sister could have seen him, she'd have been relieved. Yunjung found us in April, when the peach blossoms had just fallen. I was pulling weeds while Little Nine teased the koi with a willow branch. Then I heard hooves. Yunjung had used military scouts to track me down. Only a year had passed, but he looked 5 years older, darker, thinner, his left arm wrapped in bandages. The frontier had seen 2 brutal battles. He'd rushed back once things stabilized. Then he pulled out our separation agreement, wrinkled from being opened countless times. "Ah Yin, I've finally understood something." His eyes were bright like when we were young. "I spent years chasing what I couldn't have and ignored what was already beside me. Can you give me one more chance?" Sudden nausea hit me. I jerked my hand away, bent over, and retched. Yunjung stared in confusion. Then, little by little, his expression changed. "You're pregnant?" I didn't answer. I straightened, wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, and looked away. "Whose is it?" His eyes locked on me. Blood had begun seeping through the bandage on his arm. I still refused to answer. After a long silence, he finally forced down his anger. "Come home. We'll say the child was adopted. To everyone else, we'll still be a loving married couple." "No, I want to raise my child openly and honestly. I'm done pretending. You already have the separation papers. Please don't come here again." The sound of his horse faded into the mountain wind. Little Nine quietly came out and tugged my sleeve. "Auntie, who was that man?" "Someone I used to know." He looked really sad. "Auntie, are you sad?" "No." And I meant it. I wasn't sad, angry, or regretful. Yunjung had never loved me that deeply. Maybe he felt guilt, regret, or simply missed someone he thought would always wait for him. He expected me to remain where he left me. But I'd already gone far away. Little Nine hugged my leg. "Auntie, I don't want you to be sad." I bent down and picked him up. He was much heavier than last year. He wrapped his arms around my neck and rested his chin on my shoulder. "Auntie isn't sad." I patted his back as we walked inside. "I made steamed egg custard. Let's eat it while it's hot." "Okay." The egg custard was silky, topped with soy sauce and scallions. Little Nine ate happily while I watched him, one hand unconsciously resting on my stomach. It was still flat, but I knew a tiny life had already begun growing there. 7 months later, on a rainy morning, my daughter arrived. Fate was strange. That terrifying, reckless night during the coup had somehow produced this soft, sweet little baby who melted my heart. Little Nine stared at her for ages. "Auntie, what's my little sister's name?" "Anan. May she live a peaceful, safe life." The days passed, and Anan grew. Little Nine became the world's most devoted older brother. Every day he'd catch tiny fish from the pond, put them in a wooden basin, and carry them to her. "Little sister, look! Fish!" Anan would squeal and slap the water, soaking them both. I couldn't help laughing. Life at the estate flowed gently like a mountain stream. The pomegranate tree fruited every year. Wild chickens raided the vegetables. Little Nine learned to trap them with bamboo and keep them for eggs. Little Nine shot up in height, while Annan grew from a tiny bundle into a running, laughing girl. 7 years later, news finally came from the capital. The second prince had been killed. The crown prince later died by poison. His son now sat on the throne, and the empire was finally peaceful. The new emperor treated Little Nine, the only surviving uncle who'd never joined the succession fight, with great generosity. He made him Prince Ning and gave him a residence. Before returning, Little Nine hugged Annan and cried, promising to visit often. Then he brought my sister out of the cold palace. When I saw her again, most of her hair was white. She held my hand and cried, "Ah Yin, you raised Little Nine so well!" I cried too. Then another person arrived, mother-in-law. 7 years had aged her badly. Her hair was completely white and her back bent, but her spirit remained strong. The moment she saw me at the gate, her eyes turned red. Yin, you may have separated from my son, but I've always thought of you as my daughter. From today on, I'll be your godmother and you'll be my goddaughter. Will you accept me?" I dropped to my knees, sobbing. Between broken breaths, I explained that I'd been protecting the 9th prince and couldn't risk involving the Yun family. She crouched down and wiped my tears with her sleeve. "Silly girl, I understand all that, but I still hurt for you." Annan peeked from behind me. Mother-in-law's eyes lit up. She carefully crouched down, pulled out a pair of gold bracelets and slipped them onto Annan's wrists. "These are from Grandma." Annan looked up at me. I nodded. She sweetly called, "Grandma." Mother-in-law hugged her and burst into tears. Yun Ting and Yun Hui came too. They'd been little boys when I left. Now they were tall teenagers. Their voices were changing, so their emotional cries of "sister" sounded like ducks. It was so ridiculous I couldn't even cry properly. Our families stayed close after that. One twin pursued scholarship, the other martial training. My sister sometimes stayed at the estate too, growing flowers and vegetables while watching Annan chase butterflies. 3 more years passed. Father died while serving in Sichuan. At his funeral, I saw Lu Guan again. "My condolences, madam." He bowed. "Lord Lu." I returned the bow. "Thank you for coming to see my father off." He looked at me. "Have you been well all these years?" "Very well, the estate is quiet, perfect for retirement." He froze, then laughed. "Retirement? You're still in your prime." "I'm practically middle-aged. Lord Lu, your future is bright. You should hurry and marry a good woman." Lu Guan stood there alone. I hoped someone would someday watch the snow with him and grow old beside him. On the carriage ride home, I stopped to enjoy the scenery. Then Annan jumped down with a pinwheel, grinning at me from the road. "Didn't I tell you to stay put? What if you fell?" She pouted and whispered, "I wanted Mommy to see how fast my pinwheel spins." I sighed and put her back in the carriage. Then I noticed a blue-curtained carriage following us. It stayed behind all the way to the estate. I sent Annan inside and waited. The carriage stopped, the curtain lifted, and Lu Guan stepped out. "She's my daughter." His voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear. Annan looked far too much like him. One glance was enough to understand. My heart jumped, but my expression turned cold. "That's none of your concern." He looked past me toward the little girl holding her pinwheel, then silently got back into his carriage. A few days later, workers appeared on the abandoned land outside my estate. Months later, a new house stood there. I watched Lu Guan personally unload boxes of books and set a pot of orchids by the steps. The next day, I finally confronted him. "You're a government official. Living outside someone else's estate like this is ridiculous. Go home." His lips curved into a shameless smile. "You're not my wife. Why do you care where I live?" "You..." He was so shameless I had no response. I turned away angrily and heard him laugh behind me. His work at the Ministry of Revenue kept him incredibly busy, sometimes too busy to eat, but every day off he'd ride to the estate before sunrise. At first, Annan hid from him. He patiently waited with candied hawthorn until the little foodie finally came out. Later, she let him hold her. His eyes turned red as he rested his chin on her soft hair. My heart softened. At court, everyone moved up, except Lu Guan. "A scholar must be broad-minded and resolute, for his burden is heavy and his road is long. You've studied all these classics. You should enter the cabinet and become chancellor. Don't waste your time on little things like this." He finally looked up at me, then lowered his eyes to our daughter and answered seriously, "What's so great about becoming chancellor? I'd rather have a wife, a child, and a warm home." I scoffed. "You talk like you've already been chancellor." He froze, then laughed bitterly. Never been chancellor. Don't have a wife either. Can't even share my wife's bed. I'm basically her secret lover without an official title. That night, I climbed into his bed. Couldn't let him complain falsely. When I was 42, Yoonjung died in battle and was brought home wrapped in a horsehide shroud. The people of the north lined the roads crying for him. Whatever his failures as a husband, he had never failed the people. I'd once watched him drink and practice swordsmanship beneath the moon. Even knowing how soldiers often ended, he still spent his life defending the empire. He was a hero. I hoped his next life would give him what he truly wanted. At 46, Lu Guan retired after mourning his mother's death and settled at Dongshan. When Annan opened her medical clinic, she asked worriedly, "Mom, if I become a doctor, will it be hard to get married? Do what you want. Your mother married and divorced and still lived perfectly well. Your father never married, yet he has status, money, and a daughter. Worst case, we'll find a husband willing to marry into our family." Heh, that sounds kinda weird. I had no idea what she was so pleased about. On my 60th birthday, snow fell all night. When I woke, Lu Guan was already sweeping outside. Watching his back, I quietly recited, "An old love passes through my heart. I look back, and mountains and rivers are already autumn. If longing lets us share the falling snow, perhaps in this life we still grew old together." He turned around in shock and stared at me. So what? He smiled, almost relieved. Snow began falling again outside. He set down the broom, took my hand, and sat beside me near the warm stove. Suddenly I asked, "If there is another life, is there anything you still wish for?" He gently brushed the snow from my hair. "Everything I ever wanted came true in this life. I don't need another one."